Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast, where faith meets the front lines of culture.
We break down what's happening in the world, what's behind it, and how believers can stand strong in truth.
We're not here to fear the times, we're here to understand them.
Because being watchmen means staying awake, staying ready, and staying grounded in the Word.
Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast with Tom and Wendy. Hello, how are you guys? I just want to put a little excitement right out of the gate into your anticipation of future episodes, because not so future. As of right now, tomorrow, we have an interview with a friend of ours, Naisha Chu, who has left the left as a beautiful black lady and has become wildly influential on the Instagram, like overnight. And so we're going to hear her story. And then Wednesday of this coming week, we're going to head down to Ole Miss and attempt to go to the Turning Point USA event there, where JD Vance and Erica Kirk will be speaking. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to get in to the event. I'm sure it's going to be really popular, but we're going to give it a whirl. And at very least, we'll do some interviewing of people in the crowd, and that'll be a really fun episode. So keep an eye out for that. That should be later in the week. And we'll definitely be giving our takeaways recaps if we are able to actually get in. We're going to take our kids. It's a homeschool day. I'm excited about that. Maybe they can even share a little bit about what they learned or took away from that. And then next week, we're going to Auburn, and that we do. I feel pretty confident about that one. They're doing Benny Johnson, and then Eric and Laura Trump will be speaking at that one. So that's a pretty big venue. Both of the Ole Miss and Auburn are pretty big venues, but we're going to be doing interviews, fun stuff. So subscribe and make sure you're looking out for those episodes and tell all your friends. But for today, what are we talking about today?
I thought we'd chat a little bit about the government shutdown in relation to the conversation about
what's going to happen next.
SNAP benefits and EBT, the stoppage of welfare.
Have we met our threshold for the longest shutdown yet? Because the longest is held by Trump to 1.0.
I don't think so. Isn't it 35 days?
I don't know what the record is. So we're pushing up against it. And again, the disagreement, the reason we're in shutdown is a disagreement down the aisle upon what kind of funding should be given to what kind of people, citizens or not. And so we're coming up on, did you say November 1st is when some of the subsidized welfare benefits will be paused?
I believe right? So. I've heard November 1st payments. There is the SNAP benefits are administered by the USDA, and they have said there's insufficient funds to fund that in November, and I believe that's on the 1st.
So SNAP is what?
It stands for nutrition. It might be like single mother nutrition assistance program, supplemental nutrition assistance program, I believe. Okay. Some people call it the single mother nutrition assistance program.
That would be weird because there's no M.
It's just me.
Just you call it that.
Yeah.
Do you have to be a single mother to get said benefit?
No, I don't think so. But I think it's mostly for children. It's
mothers and children.
Yeah. Then there's also WIC, which is women, infants, and children. That I want to say is a lot more state to state. Maybe I'm honestly not sure. But and then EBT is welfare. Basically, it's the money they can spend on
anything
more broader. Yeah.
Okay. So we're coming up across what will be considered a pretty significant pinch point as far as the regular people being affected by the government shutdown. And I will say that did not happen before, correct? In the previous government shutdown, there was not any effect on...
That's a good question. I don't know if it...
I don't remember hearing that. I guess we would have.
I guess it's possible, depending on when that 35 days started. You know what I mean? That like it fell just right or something to kind of not really be a big deal. And it did say the USDA has like, this is for SNAP, some funds, but like insufficient. And then EBT, again, like not really sure what will happen because they might find this is a weird shutdown because like it's kind of a partial shutdown because it seems like they keep kind of like finding ways to pay. It's like as these deadlines come up, it's weird.
It's all a game.
It's all such a game. It's a shell game, and like as deadlines come up, they find the money for that payment to go out. It's like, are we even shut down or not? Like, are we going to live in the pain of a government shutdown so the whole point of this works? Like the whole point of shutting the government down is like we're drawing a line in the sand, no more until somebody breaks. But we're kind of like finding the money for everything, one pay period and, you know, deadline at a time. So we'll see how this goes.
We want to find things for.
Right.
Because we're certainly not finding money to pay our military, as an example. That was voted against.
And, you know, we will see. I know that didn't our military get their most recent check, though, on the 15th?
I'm not sure.
I believe they did.
Okay.
They got their most recent check, but federal civilians have not received that, is my understanding. So, like, I'll just give you a quick example. Like, when I was in the Air Force as a firefighter, about a third, maybe a quarter of the guys were fed fire. So they were probably former military.
That's a funny phrase. They were fed fire.
That's good. Federal Fire Department. It's one of the largest fire departments in the world. They're on like every government installation, military, and even some other kind of stuff. And believe it or not, a lot of the military bases are manned fire departments by civilians, and a bunch of the guys that I went to academy with or were in the military with are now federal civilians, like firefighters in the civilian department, and they are not military, so they are essential in that they're required to keep showing up to work like the military is, but they are not in the category of necessarily getting paid. So, which they're not the only ones. There's other federal employees that are in that same boat.
Don't talk through a yawn. Please. I will make you edit it. What did we want to talk about?
Well, I was just kind of thinking about that today, and a lot of the like current conversation about EBT running out is kind of like along the lines of, are we going to see unrest in the cities when people don't get their money? Is it going to be safe to go to the grocery store? Are people going to riot? Are people going to steal? Are people going to be stealing from cars in your driveway because they're short on money? It's like, and again, I'm saying this all as like, this is the silly stuff I've heard. And as I was just kind of thinking about it and analyzing it for my own, forming my own opinion on it, I was like, you know, a lot of these people that receive these benefits are not in a position to riot, probably maybe not even protest, and
because they're working.
Yeah, these are not all unemployed people. This is usually supplemental income, usually single moms, or it's supposed to be, things of that nature. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't think that's really a huge risk. Now, could there be more theft in stores? There could be, because if if a mom needs something, she might have to get it anyways, But I'm not afraid of like single moms stealing from my car in the middle of the night in my driveway, or like, I don't know, some of the things I'd heard, I was like, I don't know, I don't think it's really going to be like that. But and I have some opinions on what I think about those programs, but the reality, no matter what we all think, is there will definitely be people struggling. But that kind of led me to think just about sort of the relationship between, like, how the government has intervened in that world. And I don't know, it just popped into my mind. I was thinking of like what some of the side effects might be. I was like, it's interesting. When that money goes away, there will be almost like a reintroduction of a dynamic socially that used to be there all the time between men and women. And hear me out, this is a little bit difficult for me to articulate, but I'll do my best. 100 years ago or 200 years ago, women and men needed each other in a much more serious way. And if I had to boil it down...
for survival.
Yes.
I mean, when you read Little House on the Prairie as an example, like we had talked about that, the relationship dynamic you read of between the mom and dad is, I mean, there were very defined roles for the man and very defined roles for the woman, and it wasn't different down the road. Like, that was what all women were doing, and that was what all men were doing most of the time. Just very defined and very interdependent, because when the man has to go to town and it takes a day and a half or 2 days or 3 days
or 2 weeks,
to do that, mom has to have, he can't do that if he has a family or even a home or food storage, protect against animals coming into your house. Like, he wouldn't be able to do it if he didn't have another adult there at the farm, homestead, whatever, especially if you have kids. Like, there's just, it becomes a very clear picture of who does what.
The dynamic that came to mind, and this is just like my thoughts, so they're not, super well tested, but I was like, no, there's something here. But basically, the woman for the man brings purpose. And
the woman for the man.
To the man, a woman brings purpose. And for the woman, a man brings provision, safety, security, those kinds, those basic things. Now, when the government...
This is not speaking emotionally or relationally, just like...
It's pretty primal, I would say.
Sure.
Very, very primal, very fundamental, basic stuff. But when the government steps in and basically says, we will provide, we will, give you what otherwise used to be required, you used to need a man to get that, we will do it for you now. And we see that in so many ways, because it isn't just financially, because it's already like we offer, and I'm going to use a lot of like the single mom situation, because that is kind of what we're talking about.
That's initially what it was, designed for, especially WIC, women, infant, children. Like, you can go all the way back to the history of welfare in general and really talk about what it was designed for. And we'll jump back to that for a second,
but this is just kind of like, I was like, this is interesting, because what would happen if welfare went away overnight? Because that's kind of what we're talking about. I was like, that's an interesting thing. How would it affect us socially? I'm like, it's interesting, because there's a lot of dynamics between men and women where both, women can be choosier, and they don't have to choose for certain reasons anymore. And I think men are the same way. Like, we have boiled some things down and lost the necessity of a man and a woman being together and depending on each other, because both can get what they need away from each other, and the state being a big part of that. And it's like, I think we would interact genders would interact differently, and they did prior to the state's intrusion
when you
into
knew
that dynamic.
You were going to get married. Like that was...
Well, and also like when you like think about the amount of people, and I'm not saying this is like the perfect situation. I'm saying this is how it was, the reality of the world for people who lived out these hard things. So like if your husband died and you had 3 kids, you might marry the guy who was like 15 years older than you down the road because like...
Or the brother or
and
whoever
again,
was
I'm
available.
not saying this is perfect, but why do you think they did it? The mother did not necessarily fall in love with that, guy down the road. It was like they needed security, safety, provision for herself and her family. And a man was the thing that brought that.
And this is all in alignment with God's design. It's not, derogatory, or it's not because people are insufficient in themselves. They're insufficient in themselves on purpose, by design, because it said no helper could be found for Adam that was suitable, meaning there was a purpose for the creation of woman to complement man in a very specific way. And she was given literally different body parts with different functions that were a complement, and she is called the helper to man. It is, and Erica Kirk put it beautifully at the memorial, that they're not meant to be rivals. They're not meant to be in, butting up against each other. They're meant to be a complement by design. So saying all of this is to say that was the point. That's the goal, is that you were meant to need and desire the other half on purpose, by design.
Well, and I think like in how women can afford to treat and look at a relationship with a man, I'm not saying a specific one, when they no longer need provision, you know what I mean? Provision is provided by the government. They no longer need education.
Or at least that's an option.
It's an option, yeah. I'm not saying just everyone, but
right.
This is a dynamic. We're talking about like, what if welfare was to just go away tomorrow? Like, how would that socially affect things? And I was just kind of playing through some things in my head. I'm like, it's interesting, the dynamics that have changed socially between man and woman in that construct. And, provision is provided by the government, education and childcare is provided by the government.
Through public school.
We already live in a society, I mean, again, comparing it to 200 years ago on the plains, security is generally provided for. We have police officers that just patrol around and make sure and will come running to you if you need something, as well
as... For free. I mean, it's taxpayer funded,
and
whether
again,
you're paying taxes or not.
I'm not saying all these things are bad.
No,
I'm just saying
sets up a social dynamic.
It creates a social dynamic where, and men, so how a woman can afford to interact with a man is different, because I don't need provision from you. I don't need safety from you. I don't, do you see where I'm going with this? Where that is like the design. And for men, and maybe I'm missing something, but the big thing that I see, and again, this is a big thing for man. It's not like, oh, men don't need women, but men need purpose. Women give men purpose. And like I mean, I know not all men are this way. I acknowledge that there is too many dirtbags, but for a normal, reasonably flawed man, all men are going to make mistakes, but a decently good man who desires to do good, his woman gives him purpose. His children give him purpose. There is a reason why you drag yourself up out of bed and go do miserable things, because you know why you're willing to do those things, for a purpose, and we look at the plight of how much meaning men don't have today. And a lot of us have found that purpose and that meaning, but so many haven't.
Right.
And it's interesting to me because I think it is, if I were to look a little closer, I'm like, I kind of feel like it is in part, it's worse in a social class that is more dependent on the government.
Yeah, there's like fewer marriages, fewer lasting marriages, and lots of children outside of wedlock. That's certainly
And that's a whole nother element, because we have created a system that incentivized you have to marry a man or you can marry the state. And we have created a system that if you marry the state, you don't marry a man, and you get provision from the state for being a single mom. And that there has
consequences.
Untold amount of damage.
Especially over time. I mean, it's maybe not all at once. But even going back to what you said, this is an interesting thought. Were you done? Were you going to flesh it out? How women are allowed to treat men because of they don't need a man, don't need no man, is producing less friendly ladies, women who are degrading of men, or using men, or even, I mean, the feminist movement is all about, female power. You don't need a man. Like, you can do it all on your own. You can have the career. You can even get a test tube baby if you really wanted a baby. But now we don't even talk about that because you're not supposed to want a baby either. So literally making men obsolete. The system has created an environment where men are unneeded. And then we wonder why men are dirtbags. Well, if a man only has to show up to do the deed, if you know what I'm saying, that ends up being the best incentive for him ever, is I just get to come do the deed and you don't need me otherwise. Perfect. I will go live in my parents' basement, get whatever I want whenever I want it. Really, because women have no longer they're not the gatekeeper. There's no reason to hold yourself or save yourself is what I meant to say. Save yourself. And you even said this to me when we started dating, that women are the ones that choose who they're procreating with. It's not like, do you remember having that conversation?
Very much so.
Please.
How far we've come.
Elaborate, because yes.
Well, gosh, this goes way back, but just that we were having kind of a friendly debate on, like...
He was trying to make me less liberal. He was really trying to just get in there.
Well, I was kind of just...
making me think.
Probing. I was probing the...
indoctrination.
And your friend Tess was there for part of that too.
Yep.
And I was just saying, I was being a little bit antagonistic intentionally.
Who, you?
Well, because it works so well sometimes to really, make people think. Mm-hmm. But basically, I was just kind of proposing that, it's, for lack of a better term, that it's woman's responsibility to hold men accountable in relation to, like,
how they behave.
And that it's like, if you just generally in Western culture, in Western civilization, we only have consensual sex. Now, there are obviously the crimes and all, all that, but, like, generally speaking, we do not live in a culture where it's just okay to just go rape and pillage. So women must consent to a man 99% of the time, right? And so if we're talking about men just aren't manly enough or aren't good enough or aren't decent enough or whatever, whatever women's complaints are towards men, women also are the gatekeepers. And if bad men didn't make it past the gate, then
bad men would cease to be.
I promise you, there would be some change. Up. There would be a shaping up to some degree.
But it would need to be collective, or in the very least, the one who is not allowing just any old person to do whatever is actually going to find the good guy. Like, that's how you actually sort out the douchebags.
Well, you think about in almost like Victorian times, in the 1800s, early 1900s, the chivalry was like over the top, right?
Sure.
in the gentleman's class kind of thing. And
chivalry was born in Joan of Arc's time, by the way. We just learned in homeschool the same era of chivalry.
There was, and yes, for hundreds of years, there was a way that men treated women, and all this different kind of rigmarole, if you will, that really is non-existent now.
It's really non-existent.
I mean, sadly. I would say that there is still a remnant, a minority, a remnant of people who do hold those values,
those old-fashioned ideals.
But even those are not nearly as deeply ingrained as
not cultural.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
And what do we see? We see right around the time that the feminist movement came to be is a direct correlation with just that disappearance, because women rejected chivalry en masse. And
after hundreds of years of fully loving it.
And again, I'm not saying that there weren't things wrong with civilizations and societies that did not value women properly, just to be clear. But when we went full-blown pendulum all the way to the other way, women don't need men, we can do what we want, our bodies are our bodies, we can have sex with whoever we want, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The result was not good for women or men, because it all...
And this is proved out. This is not opinion. This is we know that women are currently, in this generation, the most suicidal, the most depressed, the most anxious, the most medicated that they've ever been. So you speak about purpose. I think that's also been robbed from women in this whole setup as well, especially primarily if I would to, just throw my own opinion, with the removal of the motherhood portion of it, that's being pushed out of the focal point for women. And this is, again, polls and statistics bear this out, that it is a very low priority for a young woman today to be a mom. And that almost always shifts. I know that that's a wild revelation, but even my, peer group, those who waited to get married and waited. I mean, I remember having this debate. I always wanted to be a mom. As soon as humanly possible, I wanted to be a mom. So it was confusing to me. So I'm thinking of a specific person, a specific conversation 20 something years ago, where my friend was like, I'm going to wait till I'm 40 to even get married or have kids. And I just was like, obviously that's wildly irresponsible if you want kids, which I would venture to guess by design, I do believe in the Bible, most, if not all, women do have that desire, whether they're rebelling against it or rejecting it or stifling it or have been told it's bad to want. So if you're waiting, even if you're waiting till 36, 38, those doors are being closed for you. And then you realize, oh gosh, I mean, did you know that the average age of a female who commits suicide is 55? Here, for men, it's much younger. We're talking to teenage women and, talking about the risks of suicide and the social pressures of high school and college and being a young woman. That's not the at-risk group at all. And I think that's surprising to most people. It is 55-year-old women or thereabout that are actually sitting in the consequences, if you will, of the life decisions that, honestly, I feel like women of this generation are victim to an ideology that has told them certain things. And it's not until you're, 45, 50, 55 that you're really realizing all that you gave up, and that it was, all those things were not important, the things you prioritized, and the things you were told not to prioritize are actually the only things that matter. So I think it's purpose for both is what that long way around to tell you. And yes, kind of circling back to where I took us from, the fact that women are the gatekeeper, and women are actually the reason that men are douchebags, because we've completely stopped prioritizing how we are treated by men. And I will speak from absolute personal experience here. Like, I think I've had, other than my husband here, every other relationship had infidelity. I mean, I was just drug around all over the place, and it was bad. It was really bad. And I thought for a long time that I was just victim to guys being douchebags. But it wasn't until my final relationship before Tom that I had this clarifying moment of, no, I am choosing this. I'm allowing this. People treat you how you want, you let them treat you. And I remember I even said this to a friend recently, like my ex-boyfriend before Tom called me and told me I'm on my way over, whatever day, never came. Literally said, I'm on my way. I'm waiting for him to come over. He never showed up. I called him 22 times over the next day and a half. All calls went unanswered. Finally, he calls me back, and he's mad at me for calling him 22 times. Like I'm a crazy psycho busy, right? I'm sad to say that that's who I used to be. That was like, and I didn't end the relationship after that.
I think there are things that women kind of became unwilling to enter into with men, just like the dynamics. It's like and again, this is all biblical. Like it makes the most sense when we do it the biblical way.
Yeah.
But there are just...
I wasn't a believer then. I didn't know what the biblical way was.
Well, and I mean, I've failed in that as well. Like there's we're not judging you or me in this very moment. It's just, but the truth and reality is when we do it according to the word, it is the better way.
It works out a lot more.
And when women submit to men, their husbands specifically, and men love their wives
like
sacrificially, like Christ loved the church.
It works out better. But it's this dynamic where it takes both, in a way, are submitting to each other. Absolutely.
Right? In that sense. One is women are submitting to men, and men are giving up themselves for their women.
No, we're all under the curse, and women are going to seek after their husbands. And there's curses on that interdependency also, because we're literally living under the curse and we have sin nature. It's not perfect. It doesn't mean if you make all the right choices, your marriage will be perfect and you'll never have issues. That's not it at all either.
No, well, we're kind of simplifying a lot of things, no doubt. But it was... Maybe we're going to circle all the way back around again. But it was just interesting to me to think about
how far we've come.
EBT welfare coming to an end due to a government shutdown for a period of time. And that kind of sent my brain on a rabbit hole of just like, how would that affect things if it just went away? It's like, I think those social dynamics between men and women have been actually pretty damaged.
Yeah.
Because the state has
been the husband.
Artificially become something that
it was never meant to be.
Women I'll just pick and choose what I get from men now instead of needing them, and men need to be needed.
Well, and now there's also an incentive to not get married. And again, when you look at this biblically as a Christian, you see the satanic nature of the whole thing. Like, obviously the enemy is all over this, and it's no coincidence that this has set up this dynamic, which causes a rift between husband and wife, or men and women in general. And then when you look even deeper and go like what I'm talking about that there is an incentive to not get married. There's an incentive to be coupled up with someone and not under covenant with someone. I mean, we have plenty of friends that have stayed, and again, I say this without judgment. I say this because it's culturally accepted and normalized and completely, there's no shame around it. Not that there should be shame. Shame's the wrong word. But we're not at all. We're absolutely okay being outside of God's commandments or direction or design when you're coupled or even have children together for decades. And there's an incentive to not get married because you'll lose these government subsidies, right? And I'm saying that goes all the way up to and including free health care. And I mean, there's a number of things here. It's not just SNAP, WIC, it's subsidized, what is it called? Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is what I'm thinking of. So I do want to talk just briefly about the history here because it is relevant. It is satanic and it is racist at its core. However, it hasn't stayed in its racist, kind of birth, but it's spread out to everyone at this point. But isn't the welfare program, I'm going to need you to be engaged with me. I am
engaged. Go ahead.
Isn't the welfare program, didn't it all come out of Johnson's presidency?
Yes and no.
Was there already subsidized welfare programs before that, or was he the first and it came after him?
There were programs in the Great Depression. Okay. You know what I mean? But the way that
were
these
they
programs,
temporary?
Well, the way they were set up was different. It's like,
okay.
You ever heard of the government cheese?
No.
There was there was government cheese that the government subsidized making of blocks of cheese, which kept people employed in dairies and farms, and then gave out the cheese to families that needed it. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. So it's just the form and the way that it came from changed. But definitely the farther you go back, the less there was. And I do want to talk about how the further you go back, the more it was the church.
Well, hold on.
But we're going to come back to that. We'll come back to that. Kind of end on that.
So I know specifically with Johnson, he was a very racist man, and his plan for welfare was exactly what has come to pass, that there would be a replacement of the man or the second adult in a household. It would be replaced by the state. And he is actually quoted in saying something very, very racist regarding knowing, he was a Democrat, knowing that if this program were implemented and successful, which it was and has been, then primarily Black people would be more dependent. That was what his plan was. And we saw after he implemented this program that's exactly what happened, because in the 50s and early 60s, Black families comparatively to white families had more husband and wife couples,
lower divorce rate,
better median income. They were actually on pace to be more successful than their white counterparts in the 50s and 60s.
Definitely more
early
successful
60s.
Than more modern measurements.
Sure.
And obviously also I want to say there was more Black fathers in the homes,
absolutely,
even than white families
at that time.
So literally, just
and from the implementation of Johnson's welfare program, again, Johnson's desire was to disrupt that dynamic in Black homes. He is quoted saying as much. Okay, that's exactly what happened. We see the absolute decline of, I think it was 70+% of families had a double mom and dad in the home. And now it's, I think it might even be 13% or maybe even worse than that. I can't remember the statistic, but it has plummeted, and it didn't affect white families in the same way. For whatever reason, I don't know why it was, he obviously designed the program with nefarious intent, and it ultimately took hold more in, do you have the numbers?
In 2019, 34% of black children lived in married couple households.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's better than I am remembering. But still, a plummet of over 50% of... It didn't affect other race groups similarly to that. It was much more dramatically felt in the African-American households. So, but now it's prevalent everywhere. It's not just affecting
that's
that
really
community.
just a element
that
of
was
the
just
history
the
of
design
it
behind it.
But now it is, I
Right.
would argue, it is not a single race
Absolutely
thing
not.
at all. It's
And nor is it even lower income. Like we said, we have friends who are staying unmarried because together they would make too much money and they would lose their benefits.
well, you can't get these benefits if you're married too.
Right.
That's
true, but you can be
part.
married and still get Medicaid. Absolutely.
Yeah, yes.
So there are subsidies that you can get, but there's certainly incentives to not get married. Even if you are cohabitating and have children together, as long as you do not get married, you have these benefits coming in. And if you can't see the enemy all over that, then you're missing it. You're missing it. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be set apart. Holy means set apart. And God is holy, and his desire is for us to be holy, which is the simple definition of that is just set apart. We're supposed to be set apart. We're not supposed to be falling into these traps, guys. But when you look at it from this dynamic, you're like, very clearly the enemy's hand is all over that, all over the history of it, all over the implementation of it, and all over the consequences of it. And we're still living in it. So, all that to say, if those programs fell apart, we would see a social shift in how men and women responded to each other and what their needs would be towards each other in a new way. And it would also refocus that need back to who is actually supposed to be providing for the lack in a community. Go ahead.
I just think too, like,
which would be the church.
We hear a lot of talk right now, in the more mainstream narrative about the EBT payments not coming through and SNAP benefits ending. There is a lot of judgment. I mean, I've already seen it on Facebook and stuff of just people going,
well, you shouldn't have been on it to begin with.
Yeah, all this stuff. And you know what? Like, I don't believe that those programs are very beneficial. We've just outlined some major ways
issues.
They just deconstruct family. They deconstruct natural order. They deconstruct God's design. And that in and of itself is evil. But
could there be programs designed temporarily like the ones you're describing in the Great Depression? Sure.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm not for helping people.
Absolutely.
I'm saying what we currently have is not helping people. And
it's not solving any problems. It's creating new problems, let's say.
What I'm getting at is, so there's a lot of negativity towards the people who are about to lose these benefits, quote unquote benefits, a lot of judgment. And I would just say, as much as I could be one of those people, like, good riddance to that free money program. I think we, as the church, need to be prepared and compassionate in that these are people who are going to be struggling more than they already were struggling. Mm-hmm. And some of them might not be the greatest stewards of the benefits they're given. Others are just good people that are struggling. And our role as the church
is not to try to figure out which of which is...
Agreed. But our role as the church is really to love on these people, and we need to show up. And like we were just talking tonight of this, I want to make it, a mantra of ours of just like, when things go wrong, just like, well, hold on, maybe God is doing something. Yeah. And say that every time, just like, well, hold on, maybe God is doing something. And when in the natural, we aren't we don't always recognize it. We don't always stop to say it that way, to think about it that way. But this is an opportunity as the church to say, hold on, maybe God is doing something. Maybe he's providing us.
Maybe this is a door.
Maybe this is a door to get back to some of these people.
The way that it should have always been set up.
Who have married the state, and to minister to them and show up. But you know what? In their eyes, you have to meet them first to some degree where they're at. You have to go to them. And right now they will have a need, and whether they know it or not, they have a spiritual need.
Yeah.
But in the natural, they have an immediate natural need. And so in order for us as brothers and sisters to go to them with the spiritual need, we do need to show up compassionate to their need in the natural. Does that sound?
Absolutely.
Makes sense?
But I fear in the business of church, we're going to miss the opportunity. We're not even necessarily, and here I'll go there, we're not even necessarily aware it's going to be a need or that we could play a role, because we, as the capital C church, are very aware of not being political and not taking a side and not...
Either way, sometimes the church is afraid to acknowledge that Charlie Kirk was martyred,
or even pay attention to things that are happening outside of the church walls.
And sometimes they're worried to show compassion to people losing their welfare benefits because it's not popular with the other side or something. But what Absolutely. I would encourage church leadership to do
what's right.
is do what's right.
Do what's right.
And lead your flock. Shepherd your flock accordingly.
You know what caused King Saul, to lose his anointing? Fearing his anointing. His anointment? You can't say anointment. I didn't say ointment.
I would say anointing. To lose his anointing.
Okay. Well, his position is fearing the people more than he feared God. And my goodness gracious, if that's not where we're at. We fear people more than we fear God. If we just did what was right, we would be reaping a harvest of souls. We would be reaching the actual needy. And we as the church are supposed to be focused on widows and children, orphans. And we're missing our opportunity. I'm telling you, it's because church has been so afraid of being political. They don't even pay attention. It's not even like, oh, I'm afraid to act. That's part of it. But then there's also a huge amount of Christians who have absolutely no idea the government's shut down. They have absolutely no idea that the SNAP benefits are about to end and that they could be filling a gap even individually, not even as a collective, church building or church group or congregation, but an individual Christian might know someone who has a need and meet it immediately upon it being a need. But we don't even pay attention to what the heck is going on in the world to even recognize when those doors are being opened, because we're so head in the sand. We are so afraid. Sorry, I'm on a soapbox.
You're preaching.
I'm on a soapbox.
I am going to take that a step further and say our corporate four walls Big C church has gotten to the point where all the giving has to come into the church coffers. And don't get me wrong, I believe in the tithe, I believe in the giving, I believe in generous and joyful givers, and I believe in the function and purpose of a church body, no doubt.
Absolutely.
I also, the Lord has shown me so many times over the past few years that we are the hands and feet of Jesus, and he places us in places and positions. Individual we, you and me. And he places us into different people's lives every day, into different circumstances every day.
Environments.
And I have seen time and time again when people are praying for a miracle, and you might be God's conduit to that miracle. And
you, the individual, not your tithe through the church, but right. You, the individual.
And I have tried to just tune my ears to that, to have a heart and ears to hear and see when he calls me to do those things. And I'll share that testimony some other time of just how it kind of came to be, but the times that I've responded to him and said, yeah, I don't, this doesn't make a ton of sense, but I'm just going to do it. And it wasn't, I did it as biblically as I could in relation to, humility and, not trying to take credit, but when, and then to give all the glory to God. Like when the opportunity does come, I say, I serve a great God and he loves you. You know what I mean? And all the glory to God. But there are so many times when we are it. We're standing there in line with somebody, or we're hearing their need and going, I'll pray for you, that the Lord provides for you. Well, maybe the Lord is praying that you would provide, like he's equipped you to be that provision for someone.
Right then and there.
Right then and there. And so I think we have, again, this is not in any way, shape, or form an excuse to not give and tithe to our organized church body, because there is purpose in that also. But there is more of a calling to be a generous Christian than writing your 10% check and saying, I got an A+ for the month from God. That is not how it works. And really, I think if you really want to unlock the radical excitement of God's presence in your life, if you want to see the Lord move, answer those above and beyond calls, because I promise you, just from my experience, they're the scariest ones. We budget the 10% in. You don't budget the nudge in the grocery line to buy the person's groceries in front of you whose card's not going through. Or, and I'm just using an example, or any number of things that you hear. Or when you go in to pay your power bill and you say, is there anybody else is there someone who's having a struggle in paying their power bill? They keep a list. And I bet you the Lord will work through that when that person at the desk goes, you know what, there is. They keep a list. I know they do.
Oh, yeah.
And you say, well, who really, really needs it? They know they know the story of every person whose power is being turned off. They know how many kids are in which of those homes. I'm telling you, because those people care working behind those counters. They don't like turning the power off to a mom and kids or to a little old lady any more than we would want to. But so they know who needs it, and they'll tell you. And those people who are sitting in the cold are praying for a miracle for their power to turn on. Those are the things we don't always budget for, but that is when you are obedient in those moments, that's when you start to see the Lord show up in the wildest ways that makes him so real and present to you.
It's because of that dynamic that, if you are dependent, we're talking about being dependent on each other, husband and wife. We're supposed to be husband and wife dependent on Jesus also, right? Like these dynamics are set up on purpose. When you are dependent on Jesus as Christians, truly, this is easy stuff to do because we know that we are not our provider. Tom is not actually my provider. I'm not his provider. He has to rely on Jesus to be my provider. Every skill he has is from God. Every opportunity he has, every door that's opened, every job that's been, that he's gotten, every connection and network that's been made is all by the grace of God. God is the provider. And the story we told on our last podcast regarding $25,000 appearing at the very last minute because we know where our provision comes from. It's when we try to do it in our own strength. The government providing. That is it. That is a perfect example of in our own strength. You do not have to depend on God to be your provision when it's coming from somewhere else like clockwork, right? So some of it is. We say that these, this is where I get so irritated with people that say politics. We don't need to talk about politics because I'm like, this is spiritual. We're talking about spiritual stuff here. Like, There is a spiritual war that is setting up this disruption in family units. And there is a spiritual practice that is being forfeited when your every need is met by the state. There is a spiritual practice that comes from trusting in God for the next fill in the blank, right? The next job, the next door to open, the next paycheck sometimes, the $25,000 for that deal to go through, whatever that would look like. I mean, I just harped on this endlessly during COVID times with the jabs. You either depend on, when people are like, I have to get it because of my job. I'm like, no, you don't. Yes, I understand what you're saying. And again, I don't say this in condemnation. I wish we could recognize in those moments how spiritual what we're saying is, or how the nature of the trial that we're facing is spiritual right then.
You're speaking your faith.
Yeah, you're speaking your faith. You're saying there is no other way other than me doing this thing that I feel convicted not to do, or I can't provide for my family. Doing it in your own strength. Classic. Absolutely, there's another way. I believe that you might lose your job. You're absolutely right. You might lose your job.
How many people do we know? And these are some of the people I believe are like Christian heroes, but also American heroes. But they're humble people, just normal people,
just willing to put their money where their mouth is, so to speak.
That they actually lost everything, so to speak, their job, their provision, and not only was it restored to them in one form or another, or in a multiple thereof.
Abundance. And
it's just amazing. God's just waiting for your true faith, like a courage to be faithful.
When faith goes from being a noun to being a verb.
That's good.
That's our tagline. We keep forgetting it.
So
that's what this is about.
Maybe God is doing something here.
And maybe we do not need to fear. I'm pretty sure, because the Bible is very clear on that, about these benefits. And again, if you are on them, I understand why there would be fear. But I would encourage you to put your faith back where it belongs, in a good God who is an excellent provider, first of all. And church, I would encourage you to be in position as a large organization and a small individual person, ready to do the work of Jesus, be the hands and feet for the true need that will lead to salvation. I mean, this is where you see revival, is when people become dependent on the church instead of the state. What good things can come from that, right? When you see the true heart. I mean, my journey from atheism to Christian, gosh, one of the last hurdles that I had to overcome was becoming a Christian, like wearing that title, identifying as such. How sad is it that that was an obstacle for me because of how, as an atheist, as a non-believer, I viewed Christians. I did not view them as kind and
generous,
loving and generous.
Sacrifice.
I viewed them as hypocritical, judgmental, just ugly, bigot, blah, 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 right? And again, we understand why that opinion exists, because we get so caught up on what's happening inside the walls, or we think it's somebody else's responsibility, like you said, because I did my tithe, so surely the capital C church has a plan to meet this need and I don't have to think about it. That's not being the hands and feet.
Even we as the church have accepted the state's role in our brothers and sisters' lives, where instead of our talking points as, we'll say, Christian conservatives, instead of our talking points being it's unjust to take money from these people and give it to these people, it's not that isn't true, but there's a much more direct and truthful argument in that it is spiritually unhealthy to allow our brothers and sisters to marry the state, for the state to play this role. And there is deeper and darker consequences than just robbing from Peter to pay Paul. That's such a immature argument when, as the church, we should really be stating the true nature of the dangers of government taking on this role. But then we must respond as the church. We can't point out what's wrong and then not participate.
That's what we've got for you today. Thank you. Subscribe. Thanks for joining us on the Modern Watchman podcast.
Remember, truth isn't just something we believe, it's something we live out every day.
Stay alert, stay discerning, and don't lose sight of the hope we have in Christ.
Until next time,
Be watchmen.
Is your microphone angled at a safe angle away from your neck?
Every time you have to make the same joke.
Look, hey, you live and learn. It's a dangerous world out there.
Or you die and learn.
Okay.
Why do you have that behind you? It's bothering me.
Let me fix that. You're right.
It was the whole episode last time. Also, your face is...
Still dirty?
Like, yeah. Did you shave?
No, I did not shave.
Did not shave. Stash?
It does look more... I didn't touch a razor to my face.
Like heavily in your stash?
Yeah, I almost wonder if it's like stain. Well, I didn't put it on my stash. It could have
you also didn't have any makeup like here down.
Well, I didn't shave my face. I didn't add makeup to my... This last weekend was juvenile hunting weekend in Tennessee. So I've been...
You put on your makeup.
So
tell me about this. Explain to me why you have to put makeup on your face and then wear a bright orange hat.
Well, first of all, I don't wear a bright orange hat.
Somebody does.
Gage did.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not an expert on these things.
Oh, count it.
But there is a line of thought that like deer have
there is a line of thought.
As a prey animal, the same way that we recognize certain things in our vision better than others. So like
what?
Like we're better at picking out silhouettes and movement than we are certain other things we might, take for granted in our... We don't do it much anymore. We don't look for enemies in the woods as human beings anymore until you're in that situation.
Always.
There's be grateful that you're not one of those people.
I'm looking for enemies, just so we know.
Well, I think we can all stop and take a minute and be grateful that we're not in a position in our warm, comfy lives where we don't have to look for enemies in the woods. However,
a deer does.
Humans do sort of have those things built in. We're just not used to using them as much. And deer are dialed in creatures on that. And while they see certain colors better than others, from what I understand. From what I've heard, they see blues really well compared to other colors are more muted.
Okay.
And that's why bright orange looks the same to them roughly as some of the other colors in camouflage.
So bright orange, but definitely Caucasian is a dead giveaway.
Caucasians are dangerous, and they know it.
The deer ignores the bright orange cap.
The main thing is I want to break up my face, my facial features, because I believe... But not
your hat.
Well, first off, I didn't wear an orange hat.
You were beside a kid that was wearing an orange hat. And sometimes there's orange vests.
I don't wear an orange vest. Let's not go there.
Look, nobody's judging your level of cool,
I'm
Mr.
just saying,
Hunter.
There's no orange vest that has been worn. But either way, I wear the makeup, the paint
to break up
the general angles and even the silhouette. If I was to look more like a human from the side or the face, or blend in so they don't even see the silhouette of my head, and we have a backdrop of some camo netting, and so I just want to break it up so it just doesn't, they don't see the prominent silhouette of a man's head and shoulders where we're sitting. That.
Okay. I think
you know what?
I think thoughts.
And you know what? Little boys will remember walking around with their dad
having face paint.
In camouflage face paint for the rest of their lives. So there's that too. It's a fact. As a former little boy, I can tell you that stuff is. You
brought up something else, but I forgot.
Completely separate, or are we?
No, when you were speaking. But my brain is not working today.
Woods. Predatory, prey. Be grateful that you don't have to.
Nope.
Look for enemies in the woods.
Moving on. Carrying on. All right.